There's a saying, when the devil ignores you, then you know you're doing something wrong. Wait a minute, I'm not done now.
Let's talk about the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible things.
We roll back the clock to the moment the studio door swung open, and those scorching spitlicks flooded the set of Yam Love Fix My Life. Because that is where every pulse-pounding beat of our story begins to remember how the air itself seemed to vibrate. The hush of a live audience hungry for redemption mixed with thestral hum of production gear. Only none of them knew they were about to witness an ambush dressed up as therapy. We can't still picture DMX stepping in Changoming eyes scanning the room for signs of healing, not realizing he was walking straight into a ratings trap laid by OWN, and by extension the queen of daytime influencer.
Firstly, when the devil comes at you, maybe it's because you're trying to do something.
Herself, Oprah Winfrey. We could practically taste the tension as cameras zoomed in on every micro-expression. Waiting for the moment our vulnerability would turn televised fireworks, we felt our own breath catch. Because once that clock started, no one could rewind the humiliation that followed to keep her playing. The instant when's calmly tilted head signaled the first probing question, one that veered so sharply from the greed topic that we could almost see DMX guard slam back up. He'd walked in believing the sit-down would dissect this turbulent history. With women, a conversation he had reluctantly accepted in the hope of finding closure with his, and yet here he was cornered about substances. Before a single sentence about love or reconciliation could hit there, we remember the camera swinging to capture that flicker of disbelief in his eyes the moment realization dawned that this was never about healing, it was about spectacle. We braced ourselves as fought the feeling of being stripped down for public consumption. Because even through the screen we felt every ounce of that betrayal stabbing at his reputation. Can still hear the echo of his voice cracking under the weight of indignation. The boom of a man famous for girl-ridden anthems.
What were described as freak-off parties, elaborate,
suddenly forced to defend his 6 months of sobriety. That producers conveniently chose to clip out of the narrative the show, we soon discovered had no interest in a comeback arc. Where was the drama in that they needed him agitated, unfiltered volatility, and so the bait and switch unfurled in real time. The reunion with his sin weaponized to pry open wounds we suspect the producers had rehearsed in the show meeting because nothing rocket.
Violent, horrible. A promiscuous swinger who lied to and cheated on multiple partners. Incredibly, that's how Sean Diddy Combs' own lawyers described the billionaire music mogul, currently facing serious trafficking charges in a New York court.
Engagement metrics. Quite like a father shame repackaged as midday television therapy watched hands clasp at us. DMX's son stepped forward with lines that felt suspiciously rehearsed appling. For a sobriety ultimatum despite cameras having full knowledge it. The man had already logged half air clean. We imagined the off-screen producer nodding, urging one more tear on more raised voice. When DMX fired back that love is unconditional, witnessed a father calling for dignity in front of millions. While a network tallied potential ad impressions somewhere offstage, we picture a ratings analyst smiling at the crescendo building right on schedule. We will never forget the raw mic drop moment that followed the shoot moment DMX stormed past the craft services table, phone pressed to ear, shouting that the show.
March 27, 1975, a prophet named Ruth Green prophesied that I would travel the world and preach to millions.
Was toxic. Hellitor told TMZ Ayana set the whole thing up to make me look bad for ratings. A sentence that still rings like a siren over every recap blog. And when reporters reminded him of the camera still rolling, he doubled down that lady is toxic. Those words, strip it off any profanity, were all the proof one needed that the rapper had reached a breaking point conjured solely for television drama. Started digging deeper and uncovered whispers that this was noise-elated misfire, but a calculated move BOWN to sabotage DMX's momentum. Just as streaming algorithms were serving his classics to a new generation, sources close to the production staff muttered about a PowerPoint deck framing his meltdown as a must-see cultural momentusing. That very phrasing to convince advertisers the show would trend. That revelation jolted us was Oprah's empire, quietly ensuring that hip-hop's raw voices remained boxed inside outdated series, even while Sanita's Etzipertar brands were handed the keys to primetime respectability. Our suspicion sharpened when we traced similar patterns. We recalled how 50 Cent once confessed that Oprah was completely against everything. That was in my muse, effectively slamming the door on his early dream of landing her couch. We connected dots to Seal's viral accusation that Oprah surely knew about Harvey Weinstein's predatory history for decades, yet stayed silent until headlines made silence impossible. We remembered Rose McGowan's blistering post labeling Oprah as fake as they come for cozy red carpet photos, with the most infamous names and personal misconducts kindles, while claiming to champion survivor empowerment. Those
surprised by the evidence that's already coming out in the criminal trial?
No, I'm not surprised.
I experienced some of those things. Witness violence.
Puzzle piece painted a picture. Bigger than one ambush, they hinted at an entire blueprint, one that elevates polished narratives. And's mother's untamed origin stories beneath shimmer of curated virtue carry that file oversights back to DMX's timeline. Here was an artist clawing for a new chapter, 6 months free of substances, gearing up for studio sessions that might have sparked the grittiest comeback hip-hop had seen in years, yet OWN's broadcast ignored the fresh slate, completely splicing in stumble reels from past courtroom footage instead. They wanted rage, no redemption. They spotlighted his tears, not his triumph. We wondered who approved that final cut, who decided that a man's forward motion was less bankable than replaying his lowest valleys on loop. We also couldn't shake the eerie symmetry between how OWN framed DMX and how Oprah's broader circle seemed to circle wagons around certain powerful figures accused of darker offenses. Taketh timeline of Shaw Diddy commerce charges stacking taller than platinum plaques. Yet some outlets withheld judgment until surveillance footage leaked, forcing mainstream anchors to cover an assault they could no longer mute. We noticed that Oprah's platform remained strangely quiet on Combs' case until the legal machinery was already churning.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't have anything against Oprah.
You just called her a
I'm gonna tell you why.
You named your dog Oprah, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
And we had to wonder whether gates of silence swing open only when society yanks them wide enough. Meanwhile, voices like DMX get thrust under those same lights the moment tears guarantee a viral clip. We asked ourselves whether this playbook dates back to the early 2000s when Dame Dash and others alleged certain media titans purposely divided the hip-hop community into safe for tiers and too gritty for Oprahbins. It is a theory we can't confirm, but when we glance at how Jay's transformation into boardroom icon got leonized by mainstream talk shows, while artists like DMX were portrayed as eternal cautionary tales, the contrast sears our retinas. But we dig further, and that rabbit hole leads straight to the haunting saga of John of God, the so-called healer Oprah. Once highlighted as inspiring only for Brazilian courts, though later brand him a serial predator who kept followers captive for grotesque purposes. We remember Oprah's statement expressing sympathy for victims, beautifying little insight into how such a figure gained her platform in the first place. We won't ignore the overlap, a pattern of putting certain personalities in pedestals until backlash forces a hastily.
Things that I experienced with him were monster-like. That stuff almost destroyed my life.
Retreat, while those from marginalized art forms often receivingly scrutiny and scorn, would keep circling back to the reunion scene between DMX and his son, because that footage encapsulates everything insidious about exploitative television producers. Allegedly coached the young man to demand sobriety, knowing the cameras would feast on paternal guilt, ignoring that father and son had met privately before filming and discussed boundaries. We can picture the tearful pauses repeated for different camera angles, the emotional dialogue truncated for the sake of pacing the off-camera whispers of energy, please. We need more emotion in post-production, editors shaved away moments of genuine affection, leaving an impression of a father in constant denial, instead of a father striving imperfectly toward change. Feel with it how mutual respect might have flourished if the network had displayed even the slightest patience. DMX had just completed a faith-based rehabilitation program, was journaling daily, meditating, writing new music that confronted person demons with unusual tenderness. Viewers never saw that footage. Instead, they watched a man's past yoked around his neck like a blinking neon sign, while the hopeful present remained his.
To me as Wild King nights. And what a Wild King night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room, which consisted of baby oil, Astroglide.
On the cutting room floor, the ratings soared, the artist's spirit plummeted. We wonder aloud what damage was done when those millions of viewers logged off, convinced that DMX would never escape chaos. Did radio programmers set the episode when choosing not to playlist his new single? Did sponsors back away from tour negotiations? Did his own loved ones feel fresh waves of embarrassment as Veramums recycled their private to turmoil? We suspect the ripple effect dwarfed any apology the network might have scribbled afterward. As we follow these echoes, the double standard becomes impossible to see. The same conglomerate that produced a tear-stained takedown of DMX ONCE handed the microphone to certain high-profile executives accused of questionable behavior and allowed them redemption.
I thought he was this clean businessman who rise to the top because he was such a powerful and smart, educated man. I had no idea that he had this other side to him. And when I started to get exposed to his lifestyle, I started to really realize, like, this guy has an addiction. It's not just, once every few weeks, it's every day, every hour.
Narrative arcs. We watched Harvey Weinstein walk red carpets, Bessie Oprah for years, only when investigative reporters bulldozed Hollywood's wall off silence did the power circle distantiate from him. We saw a documentary slam Michael Jackson's legacy, Before court appeals fully crystallized, yet we have yet to see an hour-long Oprah special grilling film mogul whose misconducts at lengths were buried under non-disclosure. Deals for ages where remember 50 Cent calling Oprah's audience elderly white women. After she had announced his lyrics and blocked him from her sofa, he later explained that had desperately wanted her validation for his grandmother's sake, but when that validation was withheld, he leaned into antagonism. Perhaps that story foreshadowed how hip-hop's raw authenticity could never be fully accepted in spaces where Sanity Z6 stories reigned supreme. DMX's saga magnifies that dissonance, and artist told to bare his soul only to have that vulnerability weaponized for mid-season sweeps. We look at Dave's Labyrinth and journey how internet theorists twisted a few offhand remarks into wild claims that he'd exposed Oprah as a handler. That rumor proved baseless, but its viral traction underlines how hungry audiences are to decode hidden power dynamics. Amin is always trying to name that puppet master pulling strings behind our screens. When we overlay that cultural appetite with what actually happened, Todd Mex and artists
afraid of coming forward. They've been afraid of what he could potentially do to them within the industry, what he could do to them professionally, maybe even personally. And so yes, it's been a dark secret they've held on to for a very, very long time.
Blurred and under one permissible insight on camera, then left to salvage his dignity alone. The suspicion feels less like tinfoil and more like smoke marking a fire. We scan Oprah's past philanthropic controversies from the Academy in South Africa, rocked by misconduct allegations against staff to critics who say her empowerment speeds ring hollow when victims accuse her of selective advocacy. We hear Seal's voice reminding followers that if rumors circulated about Weinstein for decades, surely such an industry insider would have caught the scent. We juxtapose that with the zealous interrogation Dim's endured over problems he was already confronting through sobriety, faith, and therapy off camera. And the imbalance is glaring. Consider the possibility the broader media ecosystem thrives in extreme contrasts: polish versus pain, boardroom gloss versus street grit. To maintain the dichotomy, networks might find it useful to upgrade certain artists to reformed entrepreneur status while freezing others in chaotic cautionary tale mode. DMX refusing to shape his persona into brand-safe packaging made an easy target for sensationalized redemption arcs that never intend to redeem. We believe thought is why his comeback had to be nullified before it could bloom. We can't ignore how the episode's edit overshadowed his recent faith-centered concerts that drew sold-out crowds, his volunteer appearance at youth outreach programs where he spoke candidly about mental health hurdles those uplifting chapters lack, the explosive tension producer scruff. And so the world saw a meltdown in
Sorry, I'm just like really, I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
Of a milestone, further entrenching the myth that certain hip-hop trailblazers are forever stumbling, even when their trajectory is bending toward lighted. Also see how that same formula sells buy-in music when Monique challenged pay disparities and called out what she felt was blackballing from Oprah and Lita Niels. She became framed as difficult, a Hollywood cautionary story rather than a whistleblower on systemic bias. Pattern recognized, speak loudly, demand equity, and watch narratives pivot to label you unpredictable. DMX did not walk in waving contracts, he walked in hoping for a heartfelt talk. But unpredictabilities and own soul did at maximum markup. We don't overlook the human cost. After the episode aired, insiders whispered that DMX's relationship with his son became even more strained, not healed, imaging trusting a network's promise offer conciliation, only to exit the studio with fresh wounds captured forever in high definition. We picture father and son trying to reconnect later, but every attempt haunted.
Completely outside of my frame of reference. I've been in show business since I was 14, and I've heard the stories
by replay clips and comment sections picking apart every tear. That's not therapy, that's entertainment cannibalizing intima. Siphonally lay bare what most viewers never see: the cloak and dagger pre-production contracts that reference mental health professional on set. Yet the professional often doubles as a production consultant, ensuring breakdowns occur within time. Codes, rapid-fire questionnaires disguise it as intake forms that slightly harvest personal trauma for potential talking points. And of course the non-disclosure clauses that muzzle guests from revealing how storylines were frankened in post. We believe DMX signed one-off hose, but rage overruled caution, propelling him to the press to expedite setup anyway. We wonder how many other unsung performers remained quiet because legal threats loom larger than thirst for truth. We tally possibility as the up-and-coming vocalist who sat opposite a charismatic host and online later discovered her emotional meltdown would headline promos. The actor Coxidento describing a vulnerable
Oprah Winfrey, you know what you need to do and stop hiding behind what you call was negative.
Relapsingly to see that clip looped at infinitum. While new auditions dried up, Mex may be the most visible casualty, Booth surely isn't the only Onesso. Let's leave our viewers with this final pulse-pounding thought. If OWN could bait DMX with promises of healing and instead broadcast humiliation, how many more hidden deals and unseen edits lurk behind our favorite feel-good segment? Share your theories, clash, and comments. Ignite the debate, because the next target might already be sitting in a green room, trusting that the spotlight leads to salvation until we spill the next cup of tea. Hold tight to your truth and guard it fiercely, because we'll be watching, exposing, and narrating every twist right here. Stay brave, stay skeptical, and we'll catch you on the flip.